Society sold you an incomplete story, a story that keeps you trapped, obedient, and molded to meet expectations. And the worst part, you believed every word. Since you were a child, they told you youth is the peak of life, that after 30, it's all downhill, that once you hit 40, there's not much left to do. A lie. Real life doesn't begin when you're young, following rules, trying to fit in. It begins when you realize everything you've built so far was based on what others expected from you. According to Jung, this awakening happens after 40. Sounds strange? Of course, because no one ever told you. No one told you that the first 40 years of your life are just a rehearsal, a build-up of experiences, wins and failures that aren't entirely yours. For 4 decades, you were trained to conform, programmed to play a role you didn't choose. And then, something happens, silently. A crack forms inside you. The mask starts to slip. What once made sense begins to crumble. What used to motivate you now feels empty. And you begin to ask, is this real? Who am I when no one's watching? How much of my life is truly mine? This is the most important moment of your life. The awakening. The beginning of individuation. Jung explained it clearly. In the early years, we build an identity shaped by external expectations. We become sons, students, professionals, parents, spouses, but rarely ourselves. We adapt, we wear masks, we fit in, until one day the weight becomes too much and we wake up. It's terrifying, because everything you thought was true begins to dissolve. Success, recognition, validation, suddenly they mean nothing. The person you used to be no longer fits. And in that abyss, you face 2 options. Cling to the old self and spend the next 40 years performing, or strip it all away and start over. This is the truth few are willing to face. If you reach 40 without questioning anything, without feeling that everything you built might be a lie, then you're still asleep. And the truth is, most people are. Most prefer not to see. They cling to the familiar, even when it's fake. They choose the comfort of routine over the vertigo of authenticity. But those who dare to face the truth discover something powerful: freedom. Because when you stop worrying about what others expect of you, you finally start living on your own terms. When you realize you don't have to keep walking the same path just because you've walked it for years, you discover you can choose a different direction. And when you understand that success isn't what the world applauds, but what truly fulfills you, that's when you begin to exist. And here's the question that stings: how much of your life is actually yours? How much of what you do every day reflects your true self? And how much is just a projection of what others expect? Are you living or just performing? It's easy to run from these questions, easier to keep moving forward without looking inward, but at some point, the truth will catch up to you. Eventually, the weight of living a false life becomes too heavy to carry. And when that moment comes, when you look around and realize you're not walking your path, what will you do? Here's the truth: turning 40 doesn't mean the beginning of the end. It means the beginning of a revolution. It's not decline, it's rebirth. It's the moment you can break the chains, ditch the script, defy expectations, and start writing your own story. The question is, will you dare? Jung called it the process of individuation. I call it rebirth. And you get to decide what to do with this opportunity. And here's what separates the awakened from the stuck. It's not enough to realize you've been living under a borrowed identity. It's not enough to know you've been acting in a play you didn't write. The real question is, what will you do with that awareness? And here's the hard part. When you start shedding what isn't yours, when you strip away the layers of expectations, validation, and superficial success, the first thing you feel is not relief, it's emptiness. A terrifying emptiness, because your whole life you've been defined by what you do, what you achieve, how others see you. And when you let go of all that, you're left with the hardest question of all: who are you when no one is watching? This is why so many people avoid doing the inner work. They stick to the same old identity, because even if it's fake, at least it's familiar, because the fear of the void is real. It runs deep and it paralyzes. But Jung understood something that few dare to face. The void is not the end, it's the beginning. When you strip away everything that isn't truly you, when you confront the silence of your own existence with no distractions, no filters, no performance, that's when you get the chance to rebuild yourself from the ground up, to create an identity not based on what others expect, but rooted in who you really are. And this is where the real work begins, because finding your true self isn't instant. It's not some magical epiphany. It's a process, a long road of exploration, of trial and error, of falling and getting up again. And here's something essential to understand. This path is lonely. No one can walk it for you. No one will hand you a map, a manual, or a step-by-step guide, because your real self isn't found in books or advice or trends. It's found in experience, in action, in the courage to try, to fail, to begin again. And here comes the brutal truth. Most people will never get there. They'll hold on to what's familiar, to what feels safe, even if it's fake. Because breaking everything apart and starting over is terrifying. Because facing yourself without distractions is deeply uncomfortable. But if you dare, if you're willing to dive into that void, to leave behind what isn't yours, to explore who you might actually be, then you'll finally understand the truth Jung tried to teach. Life isn't about meeting expectations, it's about transcending them. And once you're free from everything that isn't real, that's when you begin to become who you were always meant to be. And that's when everything changes. Because once you start shedding the false layers, once you confront the emptiness head-on, something unexpected happens. You realize the world you once knew no longer makes sense. The conversations that once seemed meaningful now feel hollow. The goals that used to motivate you now seem ridiculous. The fears that held you back begin to fade. It's like removing a blindfold. Suddenly, you see reality as it truly is. Unmasked, raw, honest. And no, it's not a pretty reality. It's messy, it's harsh, it's full of people running in circles that lead nowhere. And then comes the part no one prepares you for. When you awaken, you feel alone, because now you see what others can't. You understand things that used to pass unnoticed. And here comes perhaps the hardest part of all, because now you realize that many of the people around you are not walking the same path. Friendships built on superficial interests begin to dissolve. Relationships that existed just because they served a role suddenly feel hollow, artificial, pointless. And the conversations that once filled your time, now they just sound like noise. This is where many people get scared and step back, because no one wants to feel isolated. No one wants to face the truth that they may have spent years, even decades, surrounded by people with whom they never had a real connection. But this is one of the most important parts of the journey. When you let go of what you're not, you also let go of those who were only there for the version of you that never truly existed. It's a brutal filter, but it's necessary. Because only when you dare to release what no longer fits, can you begin to attract what genuinely matters. And this is where the second phase begins. Because individuation, this inner rebirth, isn't just about shedding, it's about rebuilding. And that's where many get lost. Some reach this point and fall into despair. They cling to nostalgia, to the idea that maybe they were better off before, back when they could still fit into a world that now feels alien. And that's when the next big obstacle appears, the fear of being wrong. Because when you follow someone else's path, you always have an excuse. I was just doing what was expected of me. But when you make your own decisions, when you build a life that reflects your authentic self, there's no one left to blame. If it goes wrong, it's on you. That's why so many people, even after waking up, still don't take control of their story. They remain stuck, suspended in a kind of limbo, not fully asleep, but not brave enough to move forward. But here's where another powerful lesson from Jung comes in. The process of individuation is not meant to be comfortable. It was never designed to be easy, because it requires you to face your deepest fears, to challenge every lie you've ever told yourself, to destroy the old so that something new can emerge. It's a process of death and rebirth, and like every rebirth, it demands that you go through a period of darkness. But on the other side of that darkness is something most people will never experience, a sense of absolute freedom. Because when you stop performing for others, when you begin to build a life that truly resonates with who you are, something incredible happens. The anxiety fades. That constant feeling of chasing something that never arrives dissolves. The need for external validation loses its grip. The urgency to fit in, to be accepted, to follow arbitrary rules, vanishes. And in its place, peace, a kind of peace that isn't tied to achievements or recognition or anyone's approval. It comes simply from knowing you're living your truth. That's the difference between existing and truly living, between reacting and choosing, between being a copy of who the world told you to be and becoming who you really are. But here's the final secret, the one no one ever tells you. This process never ends. There's no moment where you say, I've made it, I've found myself, now I'm completely free. Because individuation is not a destination, it's a journey. And every new chapter of your life will bring new masks to shed, new layers to release, new truths to uncover. The only difference is that once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. And that changes everything. Because when you finally understand that real life begins the moment you dare to be who you truly are, everything shifts. You start making choices from clarity, not fear. You begin surrounding yourself with people who truly vibrate at your frequency, not those who were just drawn to your old mask. You stop reacting to life. You start living it with intention. And that is the true difference between those who awaken and those who stay lost in the dream. Because in the end, the most important question is not, what should I do with my life? The real question is, who do I want to be? And once you're brave enough to answer that, everything else starts to fall into place. And this is where everything truly shifts. Because now you know, and once you know, there's no going back. You can't unhear this. You can't pretend that knot in your stomach wasn't real. You can't ignore the part of you that just moved. That's the thing about truth. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Sure, you can try to ignore it, bury yourself in your routine, act like nothing changed. But deep down, something has already cracked. And that crack, it's only going to grow until you finally have the courage to walk through it. Because there's something worse than living in ignorance, waking up and doing nothing. But here's the part that matters. You don't need all the answers. You don't need clarity right now. You just need to take the first step. The fear you feel, the uncertainty, that voice telling you you might be wrong, it's all part of the process. Let me tell you something. If you're not scared, you're probably not moving forward. Because growth is uncomfortable. Transformation hurts. And that's why most people never make it this far. They get stuck, paralyzed by the need for certainty before action. But the truth is, clarity doesn't come before. It comes along the way. So here's the challenge. Stop waiting. Stop searching for a sign. Stop asking for permission. No one is coming to save you. No one's going to show up and say, now's the perfect time. Because that perfect time, it doesn't exist. There is only now, and what you choose to do with it. So don't look for approval. Don't seek validation. Don't wait for someone to give you permission. Because the only person who gets to decide who you are is you. And now the choice is yours. You can close this video and go back to your life as if nothing happened. Or you can let this change you. You can keep doing what you've always done. Or you can take a step in a completely new direction. But if you choose the second path, if you decide to take that first step toward your real life, here's a reminder, it's never too late. It doesn't matter how long you've lived in the dark. It doesn't matter how many years you've carried a name, a role, a life that was never truly yours. There's only one question that matters now. What will you do from this moment on? Your life is not written. There's no fixed fate, no pre-written ending. Everything from here on is up to you. So tell me, are you ready to finally live? If you made it this far, I want you to leave this comment. Awakening is irreversible.
I want to know who really got the message. Who's ready to take the first step? And if anything we shared today hit you deep, if something inside you just clicked, subscribe. The journey is just getting started. See you in the next video.